The galaxy had many empires, but none were feared like the Zorathi. For centuries they moved from star to star, conquering worlds without much effort. They did not need to fight long wars. They only needed to show their weapon, plasma. Plasma was not like ordinary fire. It was brighter, hotter, and more deadly than anything most civilizations had ever seen. When the Zorathi ships arrived in orbit, they would fire a single bolt into space. Sometimes they would aim at a moon, sometimes at a floating station. Whatever they chose was burned away in seconds. The sight was enough. Entire planets gave up without a fight. To most species, plasma was not just a weapon, it was fear itself. It was the light of doom, a reminder that no wall, no shield, no armor could stand against it. Worlds bent their knees before the Zorathi, because no one wanted to face that light. When their fleet appeared above Earth, they expected the same. The Zorathi fleet came out of faster-than-light travel with grace and power. 20 colossal warships formed a dark line against the stars. Their hulls glowed with red markings like rivers of lava frozen in metal. Their plasma cannons were already warm, faint blue light pulsing from the barrels. On the ground, people watched from telescopes, cameras, and satellites. News spread in seconds. Humanity had always wondered if they were alone. Now they had their answer. The answer was not a friendly hello. It was an army with weapons that could burn a planet. The United Earth Council was called into emergency session. Leaders, scientists, and military officers gathered in the great chamber built under Geneva. They argued about defense, about surrender, about survival. The voices were sharp and full of fear. Only one man in the room seemed calm. Commander Elias. They sat at the table, his hands folded neatly before him. His uniform was plain, marked only by the simple insignia of Earth's defense forces. He was not the highest-ranking officer, nor the most powerful leader. Yet when he spoke, people listened. "We knew this day might come," Elias said, his voice steady. "We may not have plasma cannons. We may not have ships that can match theirs. But fear is their true weapon. If we give in to it, we lose before the fight begins." Some leaders scoffed. A prime minister from the Eastern Union shook her head. "Their weapons can destroy our defenses in seconds. What good is bravery against such power?" Elias turned his gaze to the giant screen on the wall. It showed the Zorathi fleet, their cannons glowing brighter with each passing minute. His eyes narrowed slightly, but his face did not change. Calm, steady, almost defiant. "Fear is a chain," he said softly. "If we do not wear it, they have nothing." The council argued for hours. Some wanted to negotiate, others wanted to surrender, a few wanted to fight. In the end, they agreed to send a signal of communication. The Zorathi, as always, responded quickly. The chamber darkened, and a projection filled the air. The image of a Zorathi warlord appeared. The alien's body was tall and thin, its skin dark like obsidian with glowing orange veins. Its eyes burned like coals, and when it spoke, its voice echoed as though made of many tones. "Humans of Earth," it said, "you now stand before the Zorathi Empire. You know our weapon, you know plasma. Surrender your world, your armies, and your freedom, or be turned to ash." A murmur of dread passed through the chamber. Several leaders lowered their eyes, but Elias rose from his seat. He stepped forward into the center of the room, standing tall before the projection. His voice was calm, without a trace of fear. "You come with threats," Elias said. "You think your plasma will break us before the battle even begins? But you are mistaken." The Zorathi warlord tilted its head, its burning eyes narrowed. "Do you not see the power of our weapon? Entire worlds have fallen after a single shot. Does your kind not understand fear?" Elias did not flinch. He did not look away. His tone remained steady, like stone unshaken by the storm. "We understand fear," he said. "We have lived with it since the first humans walked the earth. We have faced storms, fires, and weapons that shook our own world. We know what it means to stand in the shadow of destruction, but we do not bow to it. Not now. Not ever. The chamber was silent. The leaders stared at him, some in shock, some in disbelief. The Zorathi warlord hissed a sound like boiling steam. "Your words are empty," it said. "When you see our plasma strike, you will tremble like all the others." Elias's lips curved in the faintest hint of a smile. Not arrogance, just calm certainty. "Show us then," he said. "Show us your fire. You will see a human does not flinch." The warlord froze. For the first time in centuries, one of their threats had been met not with silence, not with begging, not with fear, but with defiance. The projection flickered and the image vanished. The chamber erupted in voices. Some called Elias reckless, others brave. A few began to whisper that perhaps humanity had a chance. Above Earth, the Zorathi warships shifted. Their cannons glowed brighter, preparing to fire. Billions of humans watched the sky. Some trembled, some prayed, some held their families close. But, far beneath Geneva, Commander Elias Vey stood tall and still, his eyes fixed on the stars. He knew what was coming. He knew the world was about to see the fire the Zorathi believed no one could endure. And yet, he did not move. He did not flinch. The Zorathi thought plasma was the end of hope. They were about to learn that for humans, fire had never been something to fear. The Zorathi had conquered countless worlds. Planets that once thrived with life were now barren husks, burned by the same plasma that glowed ominously in their massive cannons. To the galaxy, their weapon was not just a tool of war, it was a symbol of inevitable defeat. Fear preceded the fire, and fear alone often made surrender easier than a fight. Yet, Earth was different. Commander Elias Vey had faced fear and refused to let it rule him. But the Zorathi, arrogant and confident, could not understand this human resilience. They believed that any species, no matter how stubborn, would bow when shown the power of plasma. They had never encountered a species that did not quake. The war room aboard the Zorathi flagship was vast and dark, lit by the soft blue glow of the plasma charging in the main cannons. Warlord Kreth, the same figure that had confronted humanity, via projection, paced slowly. Its long fingers tapped against the control panel in irritation. "Why does this human not fear?" Kreth hissed, its voice like the grinding of stone. "Every species has broken under our light. Every species has begged for mercy, yet this one, and it stands tall." A lieutenant smaller and covered with thin, translucent skin replied, its voice nervous, wavering. "We do not know, Warlord. It is abnormal, unheard of. It is as if fear has no meaning for them." Kreth growled low in its throat. "Fear is the weapon. Without it, plasma is just energy. If this human does not understand fear, then the campaign may fail before it even begins." Meanwhile, on Earth, Elias and his team were preparing a response. Humanity had no weapons capable of matching the Zorathi directly, but Elias knew that survival was about more than firepower. It was about spirit. "Their plasma is dangerous," said Lieutenant Marquand, a strategist assigned to Elias. "We cannot stop it. One strike and cities will be destroyed, but—" She trailed off, her eyes studying the calm commander. "But we do not need to fear it," Elias finished. "Fear is the first weapon of every tyrant. If we refuse to bend, we take the first step toward winning, not by destroying them yet, but by surviving long enough to show we will fight." The scientists working under Elias had been analyzing Zorathi plasma for hours. Their conclusions were clear. It was unlike any energy humans had created. It could melt through reinforced shields, vaporize metal, and even disrupt electronic systems. But the more they studied it, the more they realized that while powerful, it was predictable. It was fire, contained in energy form. And fire could be learned, endured, and survived. Across the globe, Earth's people watched the Zorathi fleet hovering in orbit. Messages from the aliens projected over every screen in the world, warning humanity to surrender. Some people panicked. Markets crashed, families argued, children cried at the strange light in the sky. Yet for every person afraid, there were others who felt a spark of courage. It was that spark Elias relied on. He addressed the world through secure channels, his calm voice carrying across every continent. They bring fire. They think it will destroy us. It will not. We do not live by running from danger. We live by facing it. Plasma is a weapon, but fear is not ours to give. Stand with me. Stand with each other. And do not flinch. His words spread like wildfire, igniting a small but growing sense of determination. People looked at the sky differently. What had once been terror now became a challenge. Humans had survived floods, storms, wars, and famine. Could they not endure this as well? On the Zarathi flagship, Warlord Kreth prepared the first demonstration. It would not destroy Earth, yet. But a small target in orbit would suffice to show the humans their inevitable doom. The warship's cannons glowed brighter, humming with energy. Plasma in its searing brilliance shot from the barrels and struck a derelict satellite. The explosion lit the night sky across Earth, a ribbon of orange, blue, and white, as the satellite disintegrated. People on the ground watched in awe and horror, and yet Elias did not flinch. He stood at the viewing platform of the command center, hands clasped behind his back. The bright flash reflected in his eyes, yet his posture did not change. The scientists, soldiers, and politicians around him gasped, some covering their faces. They expected fear to radiate, expected a reaction. But Elias remained calm. Lieutenant Quan whispered, almost afraid to speak. How can he not react? That explosion, that fire, most of us would be frozen. Elias did not answer immediately. He simply said, fire is not something to fear. It is something to endure. If we look at plasma and see only death, we give up. But if we see it as a challenge, we see the chance to survive. The words were not for the room. They were for humanity itself. The Zarathi observed, confused. From their perspective, every species they had met had crumbled the moment plasma blazed. Humans were supposed to be the same, but this one human, this one commander, stood as if untouched by the blazing fire in the sky. For the first time in centuries, Kreth felt doubt. Could it be that humans were different? Could it be that one small planet in a distant system might not bend before the Zarathi's weapon? The thought was dangerous, terrifying even. Fear had always been the first and most effective weapon. Without it, the Empire had nothing. And that realization struck fear into Kreth's own heart, though it would not admit it aloud. On Earth, Elias convened a small meeting with key leaders and military advisors. They reviewed the damage from the satellite strike and analyzed how humanity had survived it. Every calculation showed destruction was possible, but not inevitable. Humanity had endurance, intelligence, and ingenuity, and most importantly, it had courage. Elias explained a simple truth: we cannot match their plasma, but we can survive it long enough to find their weaknesses. They believe fire can break us, but we have walked through fire our whole lives. It is in our nature to endure. That is our greatest weapon, not a cannon or a ship. His words were not only a strategy, they were a lesson. Humanity had never been the strongest species by sheer force. They had survived because they did not bend to fear, even when everything around them seemed unstoppable. In the coming hours, Earth would see more displays from the Zarathi, more explosions, more light, more power. But Elias's calm remained, unshaken. He walked among his people, meeting scientists, soldiers, and civilians alike, speaking quietly yet firmly. Do not flinch. They believe plasma is all-powerful. It is not. We endure. We survive. That is enough for now. Across the world, people began to prepare, not in panic, but in organized calm. Emergency shelters, evacuation plans, and communications. Networks were strengthened. Humanity had faced disaster before. They would face it again. And this time, they would not bow. Kreth, aboard the flagship, watched the humans' response through surveillance. One observation troubled it most. The humans were not afraid. The humans were organizing, the humans were adapting. And the human leader, the one who had faced the plasma demonstration without flinching, stood tall, commanding respect and inspiring courage. For Kreth, the meaning was clear. Plasma alone would not be enough to conquer Earth. If fear had failed, then the Zarathi had lost the first battle before any fight had even begun. And so, while the cannons charged and humanity braced, the galaxy learned something new. Humans were not a species that crumbled under threat. Humans were a species that stared into fire and stood firm. Elias V's calm would become a symbol. Humanity's endurance would become a shield. And the Zarathi would soon discover that while plasma was deadly, courage, something they had never learned to destroy, was stronger. The first human act of defiance was small in action but immense in meaning. One human did not flinch. One human did not bow. And the first cracks in the Empire's confidence began to form. Plasma was their weapon. But for the first time in centuries, it was clear. Fear was not theirs to wield against humans. The Zarathi had never failed to instill fear. On every world they visited, the sight of their ships alone caused panic. Entire populations surrendered before a single shot was fired. Plasma was not just a weapon, it was the announcement of inevitable destruction. But Earth was different. Commander Elias V had prepared his people, not with illusions of defense, but with courage. He knew the Zarathi could destroy almost anything humans could build. Their plasma was enough to wipe out cities in seconds. Yet he also knew that fear, more than fire, was what made most civilizations crumble. Humans had survived far worse than alien weapons. Hurricanes, earthquakes, storms, nuclear accidents, these had tested them before. And through all of it, humans had endured. In the vastness of space above Earth, Kreth, the Zarathi warlord, prepared for the first true demonstration. This time, the target was no longer a derelict satellite. The Zarathi selected a small research station in low Earth orbit. Its destruction would be visible from the surface, sending a clear message. The warship's plasma cannons glowed brighter than ever before. Energy flowed along the barrels, shimmering with deadly light. On the bridge of the Zarathi flagship, officers watched with anticipation. They expected panic. They expected terror. On Earth, humanity watched from their own platforms and observatories. Governments had warned people to stay calm, to stay inside, but millions were glued to screens. The anticipation of destruction was heavy in the air. Families huddled together, holding hands, waiting for the moment the sky would light up with alien fire. Elias stood in the command center, his posture straight, his eyes calm. Around him, scientists, military officers, and civilians waited for his direction. Despite the tension, he did not show it. Calm was his armor. Calm was his message. "They will fire," Elias said quietly. "They want us to panic. They want to see fear. Do not give them that satisfaction. Watch, but do not flinch. This is their first mistake. Fear is not ours to give." Lieutenant Marquand nodded, understanding the significance. "Sir, even seeing it, I feel nervous." Elias gave a faint smile. "Good. That is natural. But feeling nervous is not the same as giving in. Remember, fire is dangerous, but it is not invincible. We endure, we survive. That is our strength." The Zarathi fired. From orbit, a brilliant bolt of plasma shot from the flagship's cannon, stretching through the void like a ribbon of liquid light. The research station shuddered under the immense heat. For a brief moment, the world held its breath. Then, the station erupted in flames. A wave of light spread across the sky, visible even from the ground. Satellites tracked the debris as it scattered into space. Alarms rang in observatories, in space agencies, and in control rooms across the globe. Most people gasped in fear. Some screamed, but Elias did not move. He stood with his hands behind his back, eyes fixed on the display. His calm was steady, unshakable. Around him, the team watched, amazed. He is not moving," one scientist whispered. How can he stand like that?" Elias turned slightly, addressing them. "Because fire is not fear. Plasma is energy. It is hot, yes, dangerous, yes, but it is not undefeatable. It is something to endure, something to understand. If we give in to fear, we lose. If we endure, we survive. That is what matters. Across the bridge of the Zorathi flagship, Kreth watched with disbelief. Its burning eyes flicked from screen to screen, analyzing the human response. Every species before this had crumbled when confronted with the first real display of plasma. Humans did not. They did not scream, did not cry, did not beg. They simply stood. Impossible, Kreth hissed. They should fear. They should beg for mercy. The lieutenant at its side shook nervously. They do not. They stand. Even after the plasma strikes. Kreth's long fingers drummed against the console, glowing with energy. Then we must increase the intensity. If one strike does not work, perhaps 2 or 3. Back on Earth, Elias moved among his people. His calm presence spread like a quiet wave. The scientists analyzing the plasma reports were shocked. One of the brightest plasma bolts in recorded history had just destroyed a station in orbit, yet their commander had not even flinched. "This is incredible," one scientist said. "I've seen storms, explosions, accidents, but never like this." How can he stay so calm? Elias stopped and looked at them. Because fear is not a weapon they can use against us, it is theirs, not ours. Their plasma can burn, destroy, and disrupt, but it cannot take courage from us. That is what makes humans different. We do not bow before light, heat, or fire. We endure it. Outside, the world watched. Videos of Elias and his calm command began spreading through news channels and social media. For the first time, a human leader faced a display of alien power and did not flinch. Images of him standing tall with the light of plasma reflected in his eyes circulated quickly. Humanity began to see hope. Even ordinary people, untrained in courage, felt the effect. Children looked at the sky and did not cry. Adults held each other's hands and steadied their hearts. The message was clear. Fear was not inevitable. Humanity could face fire without breaking. Kreth, growing more frustrated, increased the intensity of the demonstration. Another plasma bolt fired. This time, a small, uninhabited island in the Pacific was targeted. The shot hit its mark, vaporizing the area in a brilliant explosion. Smoke rose and sensors detected the energy released. It was terrifying. And yet, on the command center screens, Elias still did not flinch. Instead, he observed. He analyzed. He made mental notes about the speed, trajectory, and intensity of the plasma. Where most would panic, he learned. He watched humanity's endurance, tested not with hope, but with raw, alien power. "They think fear is everything," Elias said quietly to Quan. "But it is not. Fire can burn, plasma can destroy, but courage cannot be destroyed. That is our advantage. They forget that." Across the galaxy, other civilizations watched too. Messages from satellites, probes, and interstellar observers revealed a startling truth. Humans did not respond to the Zorathi the way other species did. Where others panicked, humans endured. Where others begged, humans learned and adapted. Humanity had survived countless disasters throughout its history. The fire of the Zorathi was frightening, yes, but it was not the end. The first real battle of psychology had already begun, and humans were winning. As night fell across the surface of Earth, Elias convened a small group to plan for what might come next. Plasma demonstrations were only the beginning. The Zorathi's full attack would be far worse, and casualties were inevitable. But humanity was not unprepared. Humans had survived impossible odds before. They could survive this too. "We have seen their fire," Elias said. "We have seen their plasma in action, and we have endured it. That is the lesson. Fear is theirs to wield, but it cannot touch us unless we allow it. Prepare defenses, yes. Study their weapons, yes. But never give them fear. That is the weapon they cannot take from us." Quan nodded. "It is Inspiring, sir. People will follow you because of this. Elias glanced at the screens, showing the debris of the research station and the island, and then at the people working around him. Inspiration alone is not enough. Courage alone is not enough. We must endure, learn, and prepare. Plasma is powerful, yes, but so is human determination. That is something no weapon can destroy. Above, the Zorathi fleet waited, unsure of what to do next. Their first display had failed to produce fear. Their second demonstration had failed to intimidate. For the first time, Kreth felt doubt. A species that did not fear? One that could endure plasma strikes without flinching? It was an anomaly. A problem the Zorathi had never faced. And as Elias and his people looked toward the skies, the message was simple. Plasma might burn, but courage endured. Fire could destroy objects but not spirit. The first test of fire had ended, and humanity had passed. The Zorathi were confident in their power. Plasma had destroyed every world they had touched. From icy moons to desert planets, civilizations fell before the glowing heat of their cannons. Fire and fear were their twin weapons. One shattered cities, the other shattered spirits. But on Earth, something was different. Commander Elias Vey had watched the Zorathi's demonstrations closely. The plasma strikes were powerful, precise, and deadly, but not unpredictable. They followed patterns, obeyed physics, and were limited by energy supply and targeting systems. To most species, these details did not matter. Fear was stronger than reason, but humans saw both. Lieutenant Marquand observed Elias quietly as he studied the results of the latest plasma strike. "Sir," she said, "how can we endure it so calmly? Other civilizations could not. They would have broken already." Elias turned to her, calm and steady as always. "Because we have faced fire before," he said. "Not plasma, not alien weapons, fire, storms, earthquakes, floods, famine, wars. We have lived through all of it. Every generation faces disaster, every people faces pain. Fear is not something we give to it. We endure it, we survive it. That is the secret the Zorathi do not understand." Quan nodded, beginning to understand. Humans had never relied on invincibility. They relied on resilience. The Zorathi assumed the galaxy bent to power, but humans bent to nothing but survival itself. The commander's calm spread throughout the operations center. Scientists who had been terrified at the first strike now worked with purpose. They analyzed. Data predicted the next plasma blast and prepared emergency systems, all while remaining composed. Elias's presence reminded them that fear was not inevitable. Meanwhile, above Earth, the Zorathi fleet grew impatient. Kreth's plans for intimidation had failed. Fear had no effect on humans. The fleet could burn, destroy, and threaten, but humans simply endured. This defiance was unprecedented. "Why do they not break?" Kreth demanded. "Every species, every planet, has fallen. Fear is our weapon. Why does this one species resist?" A lieutenant hesitated, its voice trembling. "Warlord, it is as if fear has no meaning to them. Their leader stands before the display of our strongest plasma and does not even flinch." Kreth hissed, a sound like boiling metal. "Impossible. They should crumble. They should tremble. We will strike again, twice if necessary. Their confidence is a weakness to exploit." But Kreth did not understand what made humans different. They did not rely on invincibility or speed, like many other species. They relied on something older, something deeper, endurance. Humans learned from their mistakes. Humans adapted. Humans survived disasters that should have broken them. And when threatened, they did not surrender to fear. They faced it. Elias gathered his team for a meeting. Maps, orbital data, and energy. Readings filled the table. But the conversation was not only about strategy, it was about understanding the Zorathi's weapon and the human response to it. "We have seen their plasma in action," Elias began. "It is dangerous, yes. It can destroy a city, an orbiting station, even a small continent if concentrated. But power is not invincible. It is finite. And more importantly, it does not create courage or fear on its own. The weapon only works if the one facing it gives in. Quan leaned forward. Sir, is that why you remain so calm? Elias nodded. Yes, plasma is fire in a different form. Fire can kill objects. Fire cannot kill spirit. The Zorathi do not understand that. They see only destruction and assume fear follows. But humans are different. We have faced fire before and we have survived. That is the human secret they do not see. Outside the operations center, humanity continued to observe the Zorathi fleet. People across the world watched as the alien ships glowed against the blackness of space. They had seen the plasma demonstrations and survived. And for the first time, hope spread. Fear was not inevitable. Humanity had endurance. Elias addressed the world through secure channels. His calm voice carried across continents. We have faced disaster before. We have survived storms, earthquakes, famines, and wars. The Zorathi bring fire, yes. But fire has never broken us. Fear will not break us now. Do not give it to them. Endure. Learn. Prepare. That is our strength. The message went viral, inspiring courage in ordinary citizens. People organized quietly but efficiently. Evacuation systems, emergency shelters, communication networks, all were strengthened. Humanity's resilience became visible not only in soldiers and scientists, but in every citizen who refused to panic. Kreth observed all of this from the flagship. Its sensors detected the global broadcast. Its mind, programmed to understand only submission and terror, could not process what it saw. Humans were facing their most powerful weapon without fear. Humans were not reacting as the Zorathi had predicted. This is impossible, Kreth muttered. No species should endure this. No species should resist plasma. And that was the truth. No species had. Not in living memory. Not in any report. But humans were different. Their endurance was not an anomaly. It was their essence. Elias and his team knew this, and they used it to prepare. The next strike from the Zorathi was inevitable. But now, humanity had more than courage. They had knowledge. They had observed patterns, studied energy flows, and learned from the first demonstrations. And they had something more subtle. The Zorathi's fear of the unexpected. While the aliens believed humans were naive, they did not understand that humans thrived on challenge. Humans were not afraid of fire. They learned from it. Humans were not afraid of destruction. They rebuilt from it. Humans were not afraid of plasma. They endured it. The Zorathi planned to test humans again, perhaps harder, perhaps closer. But Elias and his team were ready. Their defenses were basic but clever. Sensors, shields, and countermeasures were deployed strategically. Emergency response plans were rehearsed. Citizens were instructed calmly, not with panic, but with purpose. We survive this, Elias told them, not by matching fire with fire, not by trying to overpower them, but by enduring, learning, and standing firm. That is what no weapon can destroy, the human spirit. Quan looked at him, admiration in her eyes. They cannot break us. Can they? Elias shook his head. They can destroy objects, they can harm cities, but they cannot destroy courage, they cannot destroy hope. They cannot break spirit. That is the human secret. Across the stars, Kreth realized a dangerous truth. Plasma could kill and destroy, but plasma could not crush human resolve. It could not create fear where humans refused to give in, and a species that endured fire without flinching was unpredictable, unstoppable in a way that Zorathi had never experienced. The realization unsettled the entire fleet. For the first time, the invincible empire felt doubt. For the first time, a single species stood against them, not with weapons that matched theirs, but with resilience they could not calculate. And on Earth, humans prepared quietly, confidently, with their commander at the center. Elias's calm inspired every soldier, every scientist, every civilian. They learned to face the heat of plasma without flinching. They learned to see fire as something to endure, not to fear. They learned that survival was more than reaction. It was understanding, courage, and adaptation. The Zarathi believed they brought the ultimate weapon, but humans had a weapon they could not see, measure, or destroy: endurance. Fire could destroy. Cities' plasma could vaporize stations, but spirit endured. And that spirit, that secret of humanity, was something the galaxy had never seen before. As the night deepened over Earth, Elias walked among his people, quietly checking on operations, reassuring teams, and observing preparations. Every face he saw reflected courage. Every action was proof that humanity had learned the truth of their own strength. They could endure fire. They could survive plasma. They could face the unknown without fear. The Zarathi, for all their power, had underestimated humans. They had assumed fear would come naturally. But on Earth, one human commander had revealed the truth. The human secret was not strength, not weapons, not speed, but the courage to endure what others could not. And that secret, quietly, steadily, would change the coming battle. The Zarathi fleet hung over Earth like a dark cloud, their massive ships glowing with red-hot markings, each plasma cannon pulsing ominously. For centuries, such a sight had meant certain defeat for any species. Entire civilizations had surrendered at the first glimpse of their firepower. But Earth was different. Commander Elias Vey stood in the central command center, calm as always. His eyes, steady and unflinching, scanned the data from orbiting satellites and sensors. The first plasma demonstrations had tested humanity's endurance, and humanity had passed. Cities had remained intact, lives had been preserved, and civilians had not succumbed to panic. Fear, which had broken countless civilizations, had failed. The Zarathi did not understand what they were facing. To them, plasma was absolute. It destroyed objects, it destroyed lives, it destroyed hope. But humans were different. Humans endured, humans learned, humans adapted, and humans refused to bow before fire. Elias spoke to his officers, his voice calm but full of authority. They will escalate. That is what they do. Plasma is their weapon, yes, but fear is their true tool, and fear has failed. Remember this. They have only destroyed objects. They have not destroyed courage. They have not destroyed spirit. That is why we survive. That is why we endure. That is why we will prevail. Lieutenant? Marquand nodded, feeling the weight of his words. Sir, the fleet is preparing multiple strikes. If they fire together, it could be devastating. Elias did not flinch. We prepare. We observe. We endure. Let them waste their energy striking at us. Let them believe they can break us. They cannot. Not if we stand together. Across the globe, humans worked quietly but efficiently. Emergency shelters were staffed, communication networks reinforced, and civilian drills conducted with calm precision. Humanity had faced disasters before: earthquakes, hurricanes, floods, and wars, and had survived. This was no different. The difference was not in the fire or the destruction, it was in how humans responded to it. Above Earth, Kreth's patience wore thin. Its strategy had failed. Its initial plasma strikes had done no more than test the humans. They had expected panic, surrender, and despair. Instead, humans had endured. One human in particular, Commander Elias Vey, had become the symbol of their defiance. Impossible, Kreth hissed, its voice like molten rock. They should tremble. They should beg for mercy. Every species before them has fallen. Why does this one resist? A lieutenant answered hesitantly. Warlord, it is not just this one human. Humanity, as a species, they endure, they adapt. They do not give in to fear. Kreth's glowing eyes narrowed. Then we must escalate. We will fire on multiple targets simultaneously. We will crush their confidence. We will destroy what they love most. Only then, perhaps, they will understand. But Kreth underestimated humans. Elias had taught them a lesson the Zarathi could not comprehend. Courage was more powerful than fire. Humanity's resilience was built from centuries of enduring disasters that would have broken most species. They did not need to match the Zorathi's firepower. They only needed to survive it long enough to respond. When the Zorathi fired again, multiple plasma bolts streaked toward Earth. Satellites tracked the trajectory. Cities watched the skies light up with the alien fire, expecting annihilation. Explosions erupted in uninhabited areas, vaporizing remote terrain and creating massive light shows across the planet. The heat and energy were immense, capable of melting steel and destroying buildings, and yet, humanity endured. In the command center, Elias calmly monitored the impact. He walked among his officers and scientists, adjusting plans and offering reassurance. "Remember," he said, "plasma destroys objects, not courage. Fire can burn buildings, not spirit. Destruction is not defeat. Survival is victory. Stand firm, observe, learn, endure." On the surface, people watched. Panic did not rule them. Instead, calm and courage spread like a quiet wave. Citizens helped each other, guided children to safety, and followed evacuation protocols with precision. Humanity was learning to face fire without fear. Kreth's sensors could detect this. Its frustration grew. They had expected terror, desperation, and chaos. Instead, the humans remained organized, resilient, and calm. One human in particular, Commander Elias Vey, stood as a beacon of defiance. This was not a species that crumbled under fire. This was a species that grew stronger in its presence. Elias addressed the world through secure channels. His voice was steady, clear, and inspiring. The Zorathi believe their plasma is unstoppable. They believe fire will destroy us. But fire does not break humanity. It has never broken us. We endure. We survive. We adapt. That is why we are not afraid. That is why we will prevail. Across the globe, screens showed his calm figure, his steady eyes, and his quiet assurance. Ordinary people, soldiers, and scientists alike felt courage rise within them. Fear, which had once seemed inevitable, was no longer an option. Humans were not helpless. Humans could endure. Humans could fight back, not with weapons of destruction, but with courage, intelligence, and unity. Kreth realized its mistake. Fear had failed. Its ultimate weapon, plasma, could destroy objects, but it could not destroy spirit. It could not destroy hope. And in that realization lay its first true vulnerability. The Zorathi fleet hesitated. Their next moves, previously certain and precise, became uncertain. Plasma could no longer guarantee submission. Strategy alone could not predict the humans' response. They had encountered a species that could endure fire without flinching. They had encountered a species that refused to surrender to fear. Elias knew this. He understood that the battle was not just about survival. It was about teaching the Zorathi, a truth they could not calculate. Humans were unpredictable because humans endured. Humans thrived in adversity because humans did not give in. He turned to Quan. "They believe fire will break us, but it cannot. Their weapons are strong, yes. Their fleet is vast, yes, but courage, intelligence, and endurance are stronger. Remember that. Humanity does not break under pressure. Humanity survives." The next wave of plasma strikes was approaching. Sensors warned of potential destruction, but Elias remained calm. The team followed his lead, directing civilians, coordinating emergency measures, and tracking energy flows. Every human movement was precise, careful, and confident, and they were ready, not because they had the same weapons as the Zorathi, but because they had the courage to endure. And when the bolts hit uninhabited areas, humanity endured. Damage was contained. Lives were preserved. Fear did not spread. Humans had proven that plasma could destroy objects, but it could not destroy spirit. Across the galaxy, observers from other civilizations began to take notice. Humans had survived an onslaught that would have ended countless species. A small planet, previously unknown and underestimated, had faced the Zorathi fleet without surrendering. And the lesson was clear: Humans were different. Humans could endure what others could not. Humans could thrive where others fell. Kreth understood this now reluctantly. Its confidence was shaken. For centuries, plasma had guaranteed victory. For the first time, it did not. Humanity's endurance had introduced uncertainty into the Zorathi strategy, a dangerous and unpredictable variable. Elias knew the final lesson of this turning point. It was not about weapons or destruction, it was about courage. Humanity had survived the fire. Humanity had faced plasma without flinching. And in doing so, they had turned the greatest weapon of terror into a test of spirit. He addressed his team once more. The Zorathi believe they can crush us with fear. They have failed. Plasma can burn, yes, but it cannot destroy courage. It cannot destroy unity. It cannot destroy hope. Humanity has proven it can endure what others could not. That is our greatest strength. And across the command center, across the planet, that strength was visible. People stood together. Soldiers, scientists, civilians, all united in calm defiance. Humans had survived the first true test of fire. They had faced the greatest weapon the galaxy had ever seen, and they had not flinched. The Zorathi fleet remained above, its massive ships glowing with power, but hesitation had entered their minds. Plasma was their weapon. Fear was their strategy. Both had failed against humanity, and in that failure the turning point of this conflict had arrived. Humanity was no longer just a planet to conquer. Humanity was a species that could endure fire, resist fear, and stand against the impossible. And the galaxy would remember that lesson. Plasma could destroy cities, but it could not destroy the human spirit. Elias watched the stars, his calm unbroken. He knew the coming days would be difficult. The Zorathi might strike again more intensely with greater force, but humanity had learned something the aliens could not predict. Courage endured where fear failed. Endurance outlasted destruction. And humans never flinched. The turning point was clear. The Zorathi could fire plasma. They could threaten. They could destroy. But they could not break humanity. And that was the first true victory.